In a Fox News alert, Israel and Iran trading fire, launching direct attacks for the first time since the U.S. declared a ceasefire 2 months ago. The new assaults raising the risk of full-scale war breaking out again in the Middle East. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Welcome back again to you. It's great to have you back.
Glad to be here.
All right, I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home. Hope you had a grand weekend. And now we've got this, America. Loud explosions over central Israel, Iran firing at least 10 ballistic missiles. All were intercepted. Israeli forces striking back, hitting targets in central and western Iran. President Trump urging both sides to stop the shooting, calling on Iran to get back to the table and make a deal.
General Jack Keane is here with analysis. But first, Alex Hogan in Bridgewater, New Jersey, with an update. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Dana and Bill. So the president is here in Bedminster. It comes as this renewed exchange of fire between Israel and Iran, the first exchange of fire since the ceasefire began 2 months ago today. The president here in New Jersey telling both sides to cease hostilities, posting this earlier this morning on Truth Social, writing, quote, both sides, Israel and Iran, are looking to do an immediate ceasefire. Final negotiations on peace are proceeding, subject to ignorance or stupidity getting in its way. The blockade will remain in place and in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. The renewed fighting comes after the IDF carried out airstrikes on Beirut yesterday, targeting Hezbollah, one of Iran's proxies. Iran later unleashed strikes of its own on Israel. So Iran's military today announcing that it is halting offensive operations, although the IDF in the last hour or so says that it's striking southern Lebanon. The president over the weekend telling Fox that this is not going to help negotiations. And when asked in an interview about Iranian leadership and the Ayatollah's son, the president said he has not spoken with him, but he would like to.
I don't want to say whether or not I know where he is, but there's a good probability that I do.
Meantime, another Iranian-backed proxy, the Houthis, today announced a missile attack of their own on Israel and say that they are banning Israeli shipping on the Red Sea, a key shipping lane. The president's schedule today includes executive time before he's expected to travel to New York City for Game 3 of the NBA Finals tonight. Bill, Dana, back to you.
All right, Alex, thank you so much.
So on the map over here, Dana, going to give our viewers an idea about what happened over the past 2 days, really. It's a 48-hour span. Come on over here. So you've got Israel and Lebanon here, Israel to the south, Hezbollah operating inside of Lebanon to the north. That's where the flare-up happened, okay? And then you've got the exchange of fire between the Iranians trying to go after a military base in northern Israel, and then the Israelis hitting certain sites in western and southern Iran in return. But the core at the moment, really, is this proxy war. Iran backs Hezbollah. Hezbollah's been at war with Israel for some time now. Everything in green here you see is an IDF strike the Israelis hitting in southern Lebanon, primarily right around here, the town of Tyre and the Litani River, which has been a marker between these two going back decades. In the meantime, everything you see in the triangle, these are Hezbollah shots at the IDF, so they're just going back and forth and back and forth. This, however, is the air base that was targeted overnight on behalf of Iran. They fired these missiles, as we mentioned a moment ago, coming from Iran into Israel and not hitting their target because they were knocked out of the sky on behalf of the IDF and its security field, its Iron Dome there in operation. So where are we now? Let's take a walk on over. I'll go back to my colleague Dana, and we'll bring in our
esteemed colleague and guest, General Jack Keane.
The man we'd like to check in on a Monday to tell us what's happening, right?
Yes, because it feels like this is a significant development, but it's unclear to me how to figure out how it fits into the scope and scale of what we've seen already.
Yeah, well, certainly when the Iranians fired 11 ballistic missiles into Israel, that was a development since the April 8th general ceasefire. And certainly from Israel's perspective, any one of those missiles, if it penetrated, could kill hundreds of people. So there's no way that they can accept something like that. And they obviously retaliated in kind. But when you draw back from this, we went to a general ceasefire on April the 8th. And who has been violating that ceasefire? You've been reporting on it. Iran began with violations right there in the Straits of Hormuz. Fast boats, drones interfering with traffic. We have defeated every single one of those. And then on April the 17th, specific ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel in Lebanon. And who has been violating that ceasefire? Iran. Over 2,000 rockets and drones fired into northern Israel. Towns and villages evacuated, over 300 people wounded. as a result of that. I've read the terms of the April 17th agreement. It's specified in the terms that Israel, both sides, can exercise offensive capability only when an attack is planned, it's imminent, or it's in execution. And what Israel has been doing, those attacks have been in execution and they've been imminent, and they've been firing back at them from a defensive position. And then they couldn't stop them. So they said, we do have the authority to attack because they're planning them. Where are they planning it from? Southern Beirut operational headquarters. They attack Southern Beirut operational headquarters as a result of that, which is permissible in the terms of the agreement. And as a result of that, Iran fired those 11 ballistic missiles.
So we've been on the air a couple of times over the past week, 10 days, and we've talked about a ceasefire. And you come on the air, and let's be clear, there's never been a legitimate ceasefire because a ceasefire is not held. I respect your view on that. Now there's a question over the weekend as to whether or not the president would meet with the current Iranian leader, whomever that is, the Ayatollah. He was asked about it on Meet the Press. Just listen here and ask about it.
Is this younger Khomeini any better for the United States than his father was?
Younger, I think more rational, injured. He's pretty badly injured. So there's a certain bravery there. A lot of people, if they were injured that badly, they wouldn't be talking about, how are we doing with the United States? They'd have other things on their mind. So there's a certain bravery there. But he is very seriously injured.
So based on that account, he is alive. And there was a lot of question for a lot of time whether or not he was or not. I think we're a long way from that meeting. I don't know if you agree or not. But where are we in this war? Where are we in this conflict?
Yeah, good
Are we
point.
at the beginning, at the end, or somewhere in this muddy middle?
Somewhere in the middle, frankly. But on the meeting, I think I agree with you. It's remote. Obviously, I think he's significantly injured, and we've been told disfigured. Whether there would be a meeting or not, I think is unlikely. But the real issue is Iran sincere about making a deal? I mean, we have our negotiating team, in talking to them, they convince our negotiating team that there is sincerity there. But it seems like every time we get close, no deal. And why is that? Because I think the people really in charge don't want a deal, or they want a deal that are terms that are completely unacceptable to the president.
Right.
And they know what those terms are. So I think the strategy the Iranians are playing out right before our eyes, drag this out as much as possible. And they believe...
Which has always been their strategy.
Yeah, and they pay huge attention to what's going on in the United States, just like our adversaries in China and Russia do. They're tuned in here. And they know there's a midterm election coming, and they believe the pressure on the president will be considerably significant as we get closer to that. And the likelihood of his reattacking in their mind, is probably slim to none. However, what I say is you're likely to miscalculate it once again. Remember, we had a 60-day negotiation that he established with the Iranians prior to the 12-day war. I'm giving you 60 days to make the same deal we're negotiating with right now. They didn't come through with it. On the 61st day, he green-lighted Israel to attack Iran. That began the 12-day war. I believe he's holding the card here to attack, and he's giving these guys as much rope as possible. Many of us believe we've given them more than enough rope up to this point, is kind of where I am. But the president has more information than I have. And I call him my backstop, because he's not going to make a lousy deal. But we keep going on and on and on with it.
Over the weekend, I listened to an interview that you did on the Mark Thiessen and Danny Pletka podcast, and you talked about the trust in the military, our military, to be able to do what it needs to be done in order to bring this to a conclusion. Can you speak a little bit more on that for this audience?
Yeah, well, what's discounted here is, in going back to our military operations, there's two fears out there that are prevalent in the Gulf community. And one is, if that we go back to military operations, Iranians will hit the oil and gas infrastructure in the Middle East, and they likely will. However, one, we can help defend that. We're defending Israel because they asked us to. If they want us to defend that, we can put a plan together to thicken that defense. That's number one. Offensively, we've been watching these guys for 8 weeks now. What have they been doing? They've been excavating the tunnel systems that we rubbled so they couldn't get missiles out of there. What are they doing? They're taking the missiles and the launchers out, and they're taking them someplace. Are we watching that? You betcha. If we go back to military operations, what are we going to hit? We're going to hit a lot of things, but we're going after all of those missiles and those launchers and those drones.
It seems our commander-in-chief does not want to resume that military action. Is that clear to you?
I think that's where he is now, as long as he believes there's some aspiration here for some kind of a realistic deal to meet his objectives. I think once that is over, the alternative then is return to military. Remember, the estimate is 10 to 14 days. We stopped on April the 8th. This would have been over at the end of April, offensive operations. Defensive operations, we would be defending the Straits of Hormuz to keep it open, and likely, at this point, passing some of that responsibility to allies and partners. That's the track we would have been on. And we're on negotiation track, and I think it's likely coming to an end unless these guys are willing to make a deal.
We could spend 30 minutes with you.
Yeah,
Thanks
we
for
could.
coming in today.
Always great
Great
to
to
be
see you.
here.
You bet. Thank you.
See you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.